Go ahead and get your bulletins out and flip to that middle page. For the kids in the room, I've got another handout for them to follow along with. And there is a couple of scriptures that I want them to fill in the blanks. They're going to be on the screen. They are going to be in your Bible. And fill those out. Find the words in the word search. And then at the bottom there is a kind of a challenge message. If you find that, come see me right after services. I've got a special treat for you if you can find that correctly. A couple things I want to share with you real quick as we get started. Many of you have been praying for the panel's friend, Wendy Jordan. She is taking care of some cancer right now. Got word yesterday that some of her treatments are going well, and she's just wanting to give thanks to those that are praying, and she really appreciates the love and support that she's received from this congregation as well. Mike Larson came to me just before services and was asking, we need 4 volunteers to help with the soup kitchen next Sunday morning. And so if you will see Mike Larson right down here, middle aisle, right after services, if you would like to help and participate in that, we would love to continue to be a blessing to that work and let our light shine with them. And I think I saw him come in, but I'm not seeing him right now. But 2 weeks ago, Christopher Hale, there he is right there, back row, gave his life to Christ. We had that in our bulletin, but he's with us this morning. And Nicholas, what did I say? Christopher, Dad is Christopher and son is Nicholas. Gave his life to Christ. We got to watch him put on Christ in baptism. And I'm just so proud of him. If you would give him a hug and appreciation for the choices that he's made, I know that will be a blessing for him. Open your Bibles to Luke chapter 14. We've been looking at this story as kind of the jumping off place for a couple of things of talking about Jesus, talking about the conversations that we might have with friends and family. And today is the end of these 3 parts. For the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about maybe some strategies and ways that we might be able to share our faith or be a little bit proactive in the conversation. And I want us today to think about one more scenario that might go along with this idea of a meal and our faith. And so in Luke chapter 14, starting in verse 16, it says, Jesus replied, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, come, for everything is now ready. And last week, I used the illustration of what if you had an opportunity to go have a meal with Bill Gates? And many of you are not Bill Gates fans. It was obvious. And so that wasn't the greatest of illustrations. But really, if we can imagine having a meal with Jesus, if Jesus were coming to your house today for lunch or for dinner or supper or whatever you might call it, how would things change? Maybe the TV would get turned off. Maybe you would sit in a different place than you normally do. Maybe the dishes, maybe the food would change. But would our conversation change as well? A couple weeks ago, I went to take a kind of a week-long sabbatical of just study and prayer. And so I went to Harding University. I also get to see my boys while I'm there, but I was spending the week studying and praying and just trying to line some things up. One evening, I invited my 2 sons to go have dinner with me, and they brought a friend along with them. And as we drove over to the restaurant that night, I was just asking questions about school life and friends and all the things that are going on. And this friend, it didn't matter what I asked, always gave a negative answer. I bet it sure is nice just to be able to walk in to the cafeteria and just choose whatever you want. No, that food in there is so gross. Well, I bet it's nice just to be able to be on this campus filled with a bunch of people that are no, I'll tell you the problem, because there's not any mature people. And no matter what I said about some of the good points, this friend just had a negative response. We get to the restaurant and I think, aha, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask him, what do you like about this new life that you're leading? And I threw that out there. And you know what he said? I said, what do you like about being here, this college at this time of your life? Well, I'll tell you what I don't like. So this is going to be a wonderful meal. A minister went out to dinner one time. This is not me, and I really don't know this guy as well, but I've heard this story, and it was during COVID, and you know, you've been out to some restaurants over the last few months or years or decades. I don't know how long this thing has been going on. But he goes out to eat, and when he gets there, there's just a whole bunch of people waiting outside or in the lobby area of the restaurant. And they put their name on the list, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they never get called. They finally ask the receptionist, the hostess, you know, how much longer? We're on it. You're going to be seated in just a few moments. Okay, we'll wait a few more minutes. Time goes on, like 20, 30 more minutes go on before they're finally called back to their seat. They sit down, and they sit there without menus or water or chips or anything. Time goes on. They're trying to catch somebody's attention, but there's just a few people working. It's obvious that they're understaffed at this time. They finally get somebody who comes by and gives them some menus, but they don't have any silverware. They still haven't had a drink. Another 20 minutes go by, and they finally get to order, and this waitress comes up, and they're like, I'm so sorry. We had a couple people call in sick today. Please forgive us. We're doing our very best, but can I take your order? Yes. Thank you. And so this minister and his wife finally give their order. The waiter takes it back and it's put into the kitchen, I suppose. But after waiting 30, 40 minutes to be seated, after waiting another 30 minutes to finally give their order, they have to wait another about 45 minutes. And the man is like, if I wait here, and he sets this time, if I have to wait here, we are leaving right now, and I'm going to give them what for. The wife's like, just hold on, they're under duress. We'll give them some grace. And they barely beat it. I mean, the food shows up just 1 minute before he was about to explode. They put the food down, and the waitress runs off to another table, frantic about some of the other customers. And the guy cuts into his meal, and it's cold. It's not prepared right. Finally gets somebody to look after him, and they take that back. They eventually get their meal, and now they've finished their meal, and they're waiting now for their check. And this guy is like, I've had enough. And you've been there, right? I mean, enough is enough, and something needs to be said. And he was going to give them a piece of his mind. And as the waiter comes back with their bill, he was just about to light into that worker for such a horrible night. What should have been a 30, 45-minute experience has been over 2.5, 3 hours. And it wasn't good to begin with. And as he was just about to give them what for, the waitress says, Minister so-and-so, you don't know me, but I've been watching you online these last few weeks. And I want you to know that your messages have just really touched my life and my family. This has been the most difficult season that I've ever gone through. And even tonight, your grace just speaks to me. I really appreciate the way you've treated us in the midst of such difficulty. He swallows hard. I mean, don't we have those meals where we're sitting with, or we sometimes are, that difficult person? Have you ever had one, or are you not looking forward to, but you know it's coming because somewhere over this holiday season, you're going to be around a table with some coworkers, you're going to be around the table with some family, and it's going to be frustrating, it's going to be challenging. This story right here, the master invites in all of these friends and family and connections. And Scripture says one by one they decline. Oh, I just bought some property. Oh, I just bought some new animals, some new hardware, some machinery. I just got married. Something's changed in my life, and I'm not able to come. I'm not going to be able to join in this celebration. And we blitz right by it as if it was just, well, they declined to RSVP. But there's something that happens in this story, because if you read on in verse 21, it says, the servant came back and reported all of this, the decline. He reported all this to the master, and then the owner of the house, he became angry. And he ordered his servants to go back out. Now, why did he get angry? Because something wasn't right. Not only did some of these individuals say that they were going to be there, but when push came to shove, probably when the servant came and said, there is a banquet happening, and they said, well, we got something else going on. The servant didn't just go, well, all right, you're going to miss out. No, the servant said, you've already RSVP'd. You don't understand. This is important. This is significant for you. And as the servant pushed this positive into their life, these people pushed back. Well, you can't tell me what I need to do. You don't understand the hecticness, the busyness of my life. And so now they're pushing against the servant who's offering this free gift from the master. And this tension moment ensues. And I wonder if we've ever been in one of those situations. We've talked over the last few weeks about how we can proactively share our faith, but what do you do when somebody is building a wall, when they don't want to hear the message before you? How do we respond to them? Maybe it's just because they lost their priority. I mean, that's frustrating when we deal with somebody who we thought we were in line with our schedule and with our priorities, and now we step out and they're not with us. Maybe it's the pushback. Maybe it's the rhetoric that gets shared. Maybe it's the inconsistency of people. And don't we deal with this kind of stuff on a regular basis? I mean, when we're talking to people, I know I shouldn't bring this up, but I will anyway. When we talk about politics and something that's frustrating to us about the current administration, well, the supporters of the current administration will just fire right back about the previous administration. And it happens every 4 to 8 years. It doesn't matter whose side it is or who says what. If I make an observation about this administration, they're going to lambaste the previous. If I make an observation about the previous, they're going to lambaste the current. A student is going to get mad at a teacher because she or he is inflexible in an assignment or a report, even though they've given a lot of grace and education and training all the way up to the point, but when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, when the student is supposed to complete the task and the student now asks for something additional, then the teacher says, no, that's as far as we can go. Then the student becomes the one who becomes angry and grumpy and goes around the lunchroom, goes around the school talking about how Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so won't help us do this. And they get ugly and angry in the situation. Haven't we seen this in our workplace as well? Haven't we seen this in our life? I was listening to the radio just the other day. And a radio broadcaster was reporting about some celebrity who had given away his own truck. He saw a man in need and just gives him the keys to his own truck. And the radio broadcaster says, wait a minute. Why would this celebrity do something like that? Unless he's trying to hide some of his own evil deeds. Unless he doesn't want people to look into his past. And he starts to lambaste and to lay blame to the broadcaster or to the celebrity. Our world is filled with people who will be grumpy for a whole host of reasons. You've met them, haven't you? You might be related to them. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, we're probably talking about you. Grumpy people are going to come to sit at your table. How are we going to deal with them? In Romans chapter 8, verse 31, we're reminded of this great truth. If God is for us, then who can be against us? It's poised as a question. It's supposed to get us thinking about the challenges of our life. Now, if you're like me, sometimes I read this sentence and I think, if God's for us, then we're never going to have anything against us. Have you ever read it that way? I mean, the sun is always going to be shining. The weather is going to be perfect like it was last week. My friends will always call when I'm available. They will ask me about my day before I have to listen about their day. If God is for us, then all of these things that bug me and challenge me, my health issues will be wiped away. My job issues will be taken care of. I will just be on the fast track to success. If God is for us, then there's nothing that should be against us. That's not what it says. But the affirmative of this question really is helping us to see that God is for us. And the things that are against us will not prevail. Not that we won't have anything come against us, but they just will not be successful. They will not be long-lasting. Now, your long-lasting and God's long-lasting are not the same. I mean, a headache that lasts 15 minutes is long-lasting. I mean, a kid that keeps saying, Dad, 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 Dad. I'm already tired and exhausted. Now, God's long-lasting is a little bit longer than ours sometimes. But the things that come against us will not prevail. They will not win. They will not triumph in the end. Sometimes we forget that when we're sitting down with some grumpy people, some grouchy, angry people. And some of us are angry for a good reason. We've had a lot of hurt. We've had a lot of abuse in our lives. That people of authority and position have mistreated us. They've taken advantage of us. And it seems right because hurt people should hurt people. I mean, we got to get back at them. But really, blessed people should be blessing people. If God is for us, then who is against us? There's another passage in Romans chapter 14, verse 16. It says, don't let what you know to be good be referred to as evil. Don't let what you know that is right and good be spoken of as evil. If you go back in this context, Paul is talking about that old subject of eating meat and drinking, the things that we should do or shouldn't do, and it's difficult for them and their culture to draw a line. But there are some things that we know that are good and right. Don't let somebody call that evil. Before I moved to South Fork, I've never had cookies with Santa. But after Friday night, what a beautiful moment for our church to connect. Now, if you don't like cookies, if you don't like hot chocolate, and if you don't like Christmas decorations, that's fine. But don't call that event evil. Don't call that misguided or something that is ungodly, because it was a benefit and a blessing to so many. But you're going to sit down with some people. You probably know some people who are going to say, well, those Christians, and they're going to pull out some moment of history. And they're going to lambaste, they're going to paint with a very broad stroke the failings and shortcomings of all Christians. Don't let what you know that is good be spoken of as evil. Now, there's two parts to this, and I want us to be careful and pay attention, because sometimes we can take our freedoms and use that as an abuse. That we can go way too far in what we are free to do. Paul writes in Romans, what shall we say? Shall we go on sinning that grace may abound? I mean, look at me. I've been forgiven of this and this and this and this, and I just continue on so that I can continue to say that God is graceful? Can we have cookies with Santa every night and we never care about those who are living under the bridge, that we never care about those that are in homes that are being destructed? No, that wouldn't be right. That would be an abuse of what the good, the freedom that we have in Christ is all about. But don't let the good be spoken of as evil. So don't do so much of our freedoms that we just rub it in everybody else's face. And then don't let those people who will blast us for the mistakes of others, as if we all are desiring that the Crusades would come back. That we all desire that people in ministry are abusing their members sexually or financially. Don't let what you know is good be spoken of as evil. Let me share with you a couple things that might help you as you respond back to this. Because the servant goes out to the alleys and he calls in all of these different people, these broken and difficult people, so that his house would be filled. How do we respond to those that might be a challenge in our life? Number one, I want us to respond for the hurts of people more than the hurts of our feelings. I mean, if you're like me, you care about your Christianity, your spirituality. And when somebody makes an accusation, it hurts. That you would assume that I am like that. But let's not get tied up in this. Personal attacking. Personal defending. Because we already know that God is going to prevail. We already know that God says, vengeance is mine. He's going to take care of himself. He doesn't need a big brother. Like I'm supposed to provide protection for God and for God's kingdom. That's not my role and that's not my responsibility. So we don't need to respond about our hurt feelings. We're going to hurt for those who are hurting. When you get the news of someone who is sick, whose medical condition did not come back the way that they were hoping, our heart is going to break. When you hear of a friend or family member who's going through a separation or divorce, and they're challenging and chiding all those that are around them, well, you didn't do enough, you didn't help me, you didn't intervene. Instead of being hurt about that, we hurt about that relationship more than ourselves. We're going to respond with humility. We are going to be able to share the fact that our pride is not going to get in the way. That we too struggle and fall short. We may not be those that have marched with a sword on our hip, ready to defend or claim land for the name of Christ as if we were in a crusade. But maybe we have hunkered down and tried to draw circles around those that are believers and those that are not, and we've isolated ourselves or disconnected. Maybe we can respond in such a way that we help to show that we understand that we have fallen short too. Paul writes a long list of things about the world, the sins of this world. And he finishes it with, but such were some of you. This humility draws a connection and a response. We can respond with our own failures. Because misery loves company in some way. And so when somebody is struggling with a relationship, you can express some of your previous mess-ups in relationships. When somebody's dealing with an economic situation which they've made some bad choices in their life, and now this month is really becoming stressful and difficult, instead of judging or blasting them, you can share some of your struggles in which you didn't manage the resources that God had given you in a way that was right. There's a story told of, in Britain, newspaper, The Times was trying to find out what some of the leading authors and teachers were thinking about the world. And so they put out this op-ed piece asking, what's wrong with our world today? And one after another would write in these lengthy articles blasting the politics, blasting the home, blasting the entertainment, blasting so many different things. There is a Christian writer named Chesterton. He writes in, and he gives his opinion. And he says, what's wrong with the world today? I am. Sincerely yours. What if we took ownership for some of the things that are going wrong? For some of our own mistakes before we push back at those grumpy people? Would it change the tone of our conversation in any way? And then share your perspective. Last but not least, speak in love and share your perspective. That we are in a place where we can talk about some of the good that Christianity has brought to this world. Let me just tell you a couple things that I think are significant about the overarching, wide swath of Christianity that has improved just the world and morality in general. That if you would step back, regardless of Christ and God, just the principles of Christianity have made a difference in our world. Yes, our world continues to talk about the sexual abuse, the financial abuse of some churches or leaders. Yes, our world continues to talk about those that were militant who would rather lop off somebody's head as opposed to sit down in a study with them for the gospel. But there's also some other great things. Going back to the Bible times, there's this situation in which children, just freshly born, were killed because they were going to be a nuisance or a bother, an inconvenience for the family. It was a ready practice, and it continues even to this day. It has touched every region of our world all throughout time. But it was early after Christianity really got its start. In fact, in AD 85, Christian writers were talking about the infanticide, this killing of children and babies, and how that we as believers need to live with a new pattern or style of life. AD 374. Christianity had just become kind of a legal, recognized religion with some sort of political power. Bishop Basil of Caesarea encouraged the Emperor Valentina to outlaw this. And one by one, as Rome makes a new change in their political oversight, the world and the health of the newborn now changes. There is another practice of just abandonment. That if you fall on hard times, if a child is not the right sex, if this is not working for you, you can just take your child out to the hills and leave it like some would do a stray dog or an animal, and don't worry about it. And this became so prevalent in the society back then that in fact, Historians have gone back and they've looked at the Greek and the Roman literature. And not once do they find anybody who gives any sort of disparaging comment about this practice. But Christians start to see these children that are abandoned. They bring them into their home. They start to care for them. They start to give love and hope for them. Creating of orphanages. The practice continues on, and in the hardship of the Middle Ages, as it's most common that one or maybe both of your parents will die before a child reaches their own self-sufficient age. Children are left alone without proper guidance or care. And so churches, one right after another, begin to build homes for these children, places of care and protection. Citing James chapter 1, verse 27, that this true religion that should be capturing our heart is to look after the orphans and the widows. And church after church makes this part of their practice. By the middle of the 13th century, there is this order from what we would consider the Catholic Church, but the Order of the Holy Ghost has 800 orphanages spread around the world trying to solve and to help in these problems. Many monasteries, cathedrals, and schools have a place for children to be helped. In our later history, as the world goes through tumultuous moments, there's an organization that you might be familiar with, but we don't really understand its roots because what they look like now is significantly different than what they are then. Now they ring the bell with a little pot in front of the stores looking for change. But the Salvation Army was designed to be an army of believers who would go out and help those whose homes were suffering with difficult economics or relationships. They were going to be a benefit and a blessing to their lives. They dealt with people as they were coming out of prison, giving them what was then called a halfway home, as they begin their new start out of their incarceration. Organizations like the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, or the Young Women's Christian Association was started more than about 200 years ago, set up to be hostels or hotels for individuals who were traveling, looking for jobs, who didn't have a place to stay, and instead of living out in the environment, Christians would set up resources, primarily for other believers, but then also for anyone who was in need. You want to talk about someone who's grumpy, you share with them some of these positives. We talk about the Red Cross and what that really means. We talk about the nurses who grow up in a world that is being destructive and destroying one another, who go out onto the battlefield and they will provide care for those who are in need. We talk about the hospitals that grow up out of someone's faith, and so many are named after Christian people to be a blessing to our society. Even the higher education, the majority of universities started with a religious Christian theme, that we would give education and spiritual guidance to the up-and-coming generation. I want to challenge us today. When we sit across from people who may have some very negative and harsh things to say about Christianity, we can respond with love and kindness. We're not going to let our feelings get in the way. But we also can respond back with some very powerful things that Christians have done throughout the generations that have changed the world. And maybe you've got some examples of people in your life who have made a great difference as well. In Matthew chapter 5, this paraphrase reminds me of our action. Matthew chapter 5, verses 44 through 47 says, everyone can be kind to their friends, but love must do more. Everyone can be kind to their friends, but love must do more. Let that just be a part of our banner over the next few weeks as we finish out this year, as we get ready to start a new year. There's opportunities for us to have fun together with our friends and our family. But love must do more. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Involve your life with those people who are challenging, because we know if God is for us, then nothing is going to prevail. When we put ourselves in a difficult situation, God is more powerful than that difficulty or that challenge before us. We will see opportunity and potential in those moments. And this is how true children of God act. This morning I want us to hear the message of the servant who goes out and invites all those to come. And maybe you've been one of those who has been too busy, too self-absorbed to really come and be a part of the banquet, the feast, the life abundant that He has designed for us. Or maybe you've been one of those servants who have gone off and tried to encourage people, and their negative response, their lack of enthusiasm has worn off on you. And you've forgotten to speak about the good, the great of the cross, as it transforms our hearts and our lives, our homes, and our world. As we see generation after generation rising up to live out their faith in unique ways, let us too rise up and be the light in this world. I want to challenge us as we sing this song, this stronger message, for us to remember the world is going to deceive us and make us believe that we're under attack and we can't win. But the truth is, God is for us, and there's no way we can lose. Let's stand together and sing that message.